Hey, what's up, YouTube? And today we'll be talking about the nervous system and the brain. So let's just dive straight into it. So you'll be learning all of these. So first things first, let us see what a single nerve cell composes of. Right. This is a nerve cell. Surprise, surprise. Now, in a nerve cell, you have some main components, which are these things are called dendrites. Dendrites. They typically sense stuff. They will be like the sensing part of the nerve. Alright? This part is the cell body. The cell body. This is like the brain of the nerve cell. It includes the nucleus, which holds the DNA, and it's like sort of like a trigger, which I'll talk about later on. Next, we've got the axon, which is under this whitish thingy, right? We've got the axon here, right? These are like the things that generate the electrical signal. Now we've got the myelin sheath, the thing on top, right? These are the things that speed up the electrical signal. Very important. And this is why I'm not sure a thing called multiple sclerosis or something is when the myelin sheath actually breaks down, resulting in a slower electrical signal. I'm not sure. I think it's called multiple sclerosis. I'm gonna have to look into that. And this over here, the end part of the neuron is the axon terminal. This is like like the end, basically. And in the gap between two neurons, a gap between two neurons is called a synapse or synapse, right? This is where neurotransmitters are released, and we talk about that later. Okay, so let me just grab a duplicate. Let's just say you have two neurons, right? So, what will happen? Let's just say this neuron senses something. I don't know, it senses that it's a cold day today, right? The dendrites will sense it, right? The dendrites. They will sense a cold day, suppose, right? This will send it through the cell body, right? And if enough, like, how am I supposed to say? Think of dendrites like switches, and basically, and if there's enough switches on, then the cell body will be triggered, and it will send an electrical signal through the nerve cell. So, what happens? The dendrites are basically like switches, right? And if lots of them turn on, trigger the cell body. The cell body interprets it, say, "Oh, look, there's lots of um, switches on," and then it'll send the axon will send an electrical signal through action potential. Action potential. I know I'm studying quite a bit. And then the axon terminal is like the end point of it, where it will release neurotransmitters. These neurotransmitters are super important. They are vital because, right, these neurotransmitters travel through the synapse, right, through this gap between the next neurons, right? And you know how I told you the dendrites are like switches, right? These neurotransmitters will bind onto the receptors of the dendrites. So, for example, if this is like I don't know, a neurotransmitter, think of it like a puzzle piece, right? This is like a neurotransmitter. And let's just say you're gonna have like a bunch of like these on the dendrites, right? A bunch of them. And then if enough of these are turned on, like they come onto this, for example, like this. Obviously, it's not actually like this, but I'm just showing you as an example. Then it'll trigger it, and the cell body say, "Whoa, this is like way too much," right? And then the axon terminal will say, "Oh, okay, my trigger is released. I'm gonna send an electrical signal through action potential, and it will trigger the next one, and so forth. But you might be asking, wait, how does the axon actually generate electricity? I've mentioned action potential, and we'll get into that right now. Action potential. Action potential in a neuron consists of sodium, and potassium. So Na and K. What happens, right? At rest, it's like the trigger is like 70 millivolts. Right? What will happen during action potential? There's gonna be heaps of NAs, sodium, sorry, outside the axon. Just like imagine, right? These like a bunch of positively charged um atoms outside the thing, right? And these like a bunch of outside. Whoa, I can't draw. Why can I not draw? Alright, so as I was saying, this is due to action potential. So at rest, a neuron will pump out 3 sodium ions and will take in 2 potassium ions. And at rest, it is negative 70 millivolts around inside the axon. So for example, pretend this is, I'm not sure, this is not the best example, but like this is the thing, okay, positive, right? And this is say this is not the best bridge, but like this is what really happens, right? It's 70 millivolts in here, and it is more positive here. And this is at rest. When you know how we're talking about the little switches of the dendrites, when that happens, this thing opens the gate. It will open the gate, right? This will like open the gate. So now, as you can imagine, boom, 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 boom. So now, since it's more, the gates are open, right? There's more Na plus outside, right? So now they're just gonna rush in. Just gonna rush in. I was like, hey, I'm getting out of here. Let me go in, right? They want to come in because there's more concentration outside, right? And these potassium ions, obviously, this is not the best example, will leave. You'll say, oh, hell no, right? There's like way too much people in here. I'm getting out of here, right? There's more space here. And they also want to go here. There's another major factor. As I said, at rest, this is 70 millivolts, right? This is more positive. So they're going to come inside to balance everything out. And now you'll get this electrical signal that will fire through. Amazing. That's so cool. And once the inside becomes positive 30 millivolts, right? The inside, then repolarization will occur where the Na sodium channels will close, right? And the potassium channels will open, and all of the potassium will rush out, and the inside becomes negative again. So yeah, that's action potential. So let's have a recap. Okay, the nerve cell. What do they consist of? Let me write this. The nerve cell. Make this bigger. Now, you have the axon. First, let's start with dendrites. Dendrites. This part of the nerve cell is the senses the electrical signal or stimulus. Or stimulus. Right? Is if enough dendrite signals occur, then a electrical signal is produced. Now let's go on to what's next, the cell body. This part of the nerve cell acts like the brain or the big boss. It measures the amount of dendrite signals, which is just small electrical charges, very small, due to the neurotransmitter. Remember how we said neurotransmitters are chemicals? That's what happens. There's a small electrical difference which causes it to which causes the cell body to say, hey, something's not normal, we're going to send a signal, which is around plus or minus 55 millivolts. That's the threshold potential. Limited dendrite signals, which and also holds the nucleus. The axon. This part of the nerve cell is the part that generates the electricity, the electrical signal. Through action potential. Now, the myelin sheath. A myelin sheath is a fatty substance that covers the axon, speeding up the electrical signal. The axon terminal. The end part of a neuron, in which neurotransmitters are released. Synapse. The gap between neurons in which the neurotransmitter flows through. And neurotransmitter. A chemical which binds onto the receptors on the dendrites of the next neuron, helping restarting the cycle again. Basically, in short words, all you gotta do is remember it goes from dendrites to cell body to axon to the axon terminal to synapse and then to the dendrites again. That's like the main part. So take a screenshot if you want. And this is what everything about neurons. Now, it gets even more interesting. There are different types of neuron. Sensory neurons, interneurons, and motor neurons. And they each play a different role. Let's take a look. As you can see, it looks quite different. So, basically, sensory neurons, it's in the name, they sense stuff, right? For example, if you feel something like, oh, the temperature is quite cold today, that's the sensory neurons, right? So what happens? Let's just say, okay, you notice it's a cold day, right? It's cold outside, it's quite chilly, and your sensory neurons realize it, right? Now these sensory neurons will pass it up to the CNS, the central nervous system. Nervous system. Oh, by the way, I might as well get into this now. There are two types of nervous systems. So we have the nervous system. Actually, so from in the nervous system, there are two types of further system: the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system, right? The central nervous system is basically the brain and the spinal cord, whereas the peripheral nervous system is basically everything else, like all the other nerves, right? That's basically your peripheral. Now, what happens? Your CNS will contain interneurons, right? The CNS contains interneurons, right? The CNS only contains interneurons. For example, let's just say Bob. Let me draw Bob, right? Let me make him orange. Bob, right? He thinks it's a cold day. It's a very cold day. He feels a wind breeze, right? The sensory neurons will realize this. They'll say, oh, okay, it's quite cold. Let me send a signal to the interneuron, the central nervous system, right? So you go to sensory neurons, then it'll go to the CNS, which is the interneurons, basically, and then the interneurons will think. They'll say, "Oh, okay, what do we need to do?" Right? They can say, "Look, we could make our muscles shiver. We could make a behavior changes like wearing a jacket. We could also do something else, and I don't know, right?" And then it'll tell, saying, "Oh, okay." It'll tell the motor neuron to like go send this message, send this message of shiver, make the muscle shiver, right? Then what will happen, right? It will go to your doing organ. Let's just call it doing organ because I don't know what it's called, right? The doing organ, and that will give you your response, right? So what happens, right? You have a stimulus, your sensory neurons, then interneurons or CNS, then motor neurons, and then response. And this is called a negative feedback loop. Motor neurons and response. This whole process that we just did is called a negative feedback loop. We'll get into that later. So these are the different types of neurons. Now, as you can imagine, right, these interneurons are part of the brain and the spinal cord, right? They're part of the brain and the spinal cord. So obviously, if you're thinking about it, since it's part of the brain and spinal cord, right? Just imagine how much connections they will have. Like, imagine how much different dendrites, how much axons. They're gonna have a bunch of connections everywhere, right? Because they're just firing neurons, firing electrical signals here and there, right? They're doing do this, do that, do this, and this is how we learn, right? The stronger the connections, the better the thing is, like the better we learn, right? Now, the sensory neuron would probably have lots of dendrites, right? Because the dendrites are the things that do the sensing. And the motor neurons will probably have a lot of axons, so because they do, not, sorry, axon terminals, so they do like the commanding bit. But I'm not too sure, you're gonna have to fact check this. I'm not the expert, but I'm definitely sure about this part. There's just gonna be heaps of everything, right? There's just firing neurons everywhere. It's fascinating. It really is fascinating. Now, let's just get into a negative feedback. That's pretty much it, right? Interneurons thinking, sensory sensing, motor neurons doing. Tell the organ what to do. That's literally it. Tell organs what to do. What to do. Just think of the motor neurons as messengers. Types of neurons. This is sensing. The senses. As you could say, this is also a messenger in the sense that it's sending a message to the brain or to the CNS, right? Which is also the spinal cord. And this is just like this is sending a message from the brain or the CNS, sorry, I don't know why I'm saying brain, to the doing organ, right? And this is just smart guy. Just call him smart guy, smart neuron. That's basically it in a nutshell. All right, yeah, you're making some good time. Oh, by the way, not all things have to follow a negative feedback loop, which I'll explain later on, right? For example, if you're moving something, right, that doesn't have to go through. For example, if I'm typing, right, then it just goes from neuron to motor neurons, and then my, I don't know, fingers or something, right? And then fingers, right? It just skips the sensory part because there's nothing to sense, right? There's no stimulus. The stimulus is me wanting to type, and that's gonna be in your head. So yeah, that's it. Now, I'm deciding what we should do next. Hmm. Let's see what we have covered. I think we will learn negative feedback loops in another video. Okay, I'll teach you negative feedback loops in another video. These are super important, which is for homeostasis, right? Homeostasis, which is super important. I'll teach you negative feedback loop, positive feedback loop. It's really easy, and I'll teach you homeostasis. This is all gonna be in my next video. Homeostasis. All right, but for now, let's learn about reflex actions. My favorite. Reflex action. Let me just draw this in. Alright, a reflex action. What is a reflex action? Suppose, okay, look, this is a perfect photo by Juice. Right? This is a hot object, right? Let's just say it's a stove or something, right? What will happen, right? You touch this, the sensory neurons will sense it, and it will just go through to your spinal cord. It won't go through your brain. Right? Because the brain will take too long to interpret it, and then you'll instantly pull your hand away. It's subconscious. This is not voluntary. This is involuntary action. What you're doing is involuntary. So let me show you what this is, right? So what happens? Stimulus, right? As in the hot object. In this case, it's the hot object, right? Sensory neurons, they sense it. Neurons. And then the spinal cord. It goes to the spinal cord. This is very important. It skips the brain. And the reason why it skips the brain, it does not have enough time to do it. Spinal cord, interneuron, motor neurons, and then doing organ. That's really it in a nutshell, right? And then doing organ. Or let's just call it response. right? What happens? Touch it. Says, oh my God, let's send this neuron. Let's just send this guy. This guy is dumb. They just quickly make it go to the spinal cord, right? So because okay, this is we don't need the brain for this. So just quickly do this, and then brrr, it's gonna go to the motor neuron. Motor neuron is gonna tell the thing to pull away, like get out, bro. Like what are you doing? So that's gonna be it. That's basically it. Hmm. So this is a reflex action. Quite fascinating if you ask me. Now, let's get into the different subdivisions in the peripheral nervous system, right? This. Oh, I actually love this. Right? The autonomic nervous system and the sympathetic nervous system. Let's drag this here. Right? Autonomic, sympathetic. Right. The parasympathetic and the sympathetic. What am I saying? Sorry. But first, let me tell you something. Right? I think I should have discussed this earlier, but the autonomic, right, controls all involuntary, right? This is just involuntary. Involuntary actions, such as breathing. Breathing is involuntary. You don't think have to think about it. Well, you probably think about it now, but like if you're knocked out or something, you don't need to think about it. Your heartbeat is involuntary. Your what else is involuntary? Sweating is involuntary. Anything that you can't control is involuntary, which is, means it's autonomic, right? And now you've got the somatic. This is anything you can control, such as moving your arm, your legs, kicking a ball, throwing a ball, catching a ball. Yeah, that's all somatic, right? So yeah, that's literally what somatic and non-somatic is, right? But in the autonomic system, you've got two things. You got the parasympathetic and the sympathetic. Right. What is parasympathetic and sympathetic? Look, parasympathetic, right, is rest and digest, right? I'm sure you've heard of fight or flight, but not many people have heard of rest as digest. Rest and digest, right? What happens is if when you're just relaxed, right, you just chill, right? Then your body say, okay, this guy's chill. We can start doing all like the functions that we wouldn't do in a fighting scenario, right? Let's just say you're scrolling on TikTok or something, I don't know, right? Then what will happen is that digestion starts, right? These are like a few things that happen. Your digestion will start, right? Digestion starts. Your pupils will dilate, right? Oh no, sorry. Your pupils will constrict. Your pupils will constrict, right? Which means you won't be able to sleep as clear compared, right? Your bladder will also constrict, allowing you to pee, right? You can now pee when you, during parasympathetic, right? You chill as you can pee, right? Digestion will start, pupils constrict, your bladder is constricted, so you can pee now. Which is, you might say, oh, wait, if it's constricted, how are you supposed to pee, right? But it's like the opposite for bladder, right? It's like it like pushes it. I don't know. Maybe I should stop talking. Anyway, right? Your heartbeat lowers, right? Your heartbeat slows down, right? You're not doing much. You just heartbeat. You just like chill. And yeah, that's it. Maybe there's more. And oh yeah, your reproductive system. Yeah. So like that's when you get like I don't know like yeah like it will increase blood flow to like your reproductive organs, right? Increase blood flow. So what will happen, right? If you're like a male, like your wood will go up. Yeah. Just think about it. Your wood for males, I'm not sure about females, but for males, your wood will go up, right? Now, sympathetic. This is fight or flight, right? This is when you're in a tense situation, right? This is like when, have you seen the thing where there's like a woman who lifted a car, a whole car, just to get her children out of there? That's definitely sympathetic, right? That's fight or flight. Fight or flight. What happens in fight or flight is like sort of the opposite, right? Your digestion will stop. What the hell? Your digestion stops. Like you don't want to be digested when you're fighting, right? Obviously, like if you're fighting, right, you're not gonna be digesting it. You wanna like the priority of the brain is to like get out of there, like get out of like the situation by either fighting or like running away. So your digestion will stop, right? Your pupils will dilate, right, allowing for clearer vision, right? A clearer, wider vision. Your bladders will relax, right? Which means you will stop peeing. You won't be able to pee as much. And you might say, oh, well, if you're really scared, you'll pee, right? But like, those are like in extreme scenarios. So that's like when it's like so tight that the brain has to allow it because it's just like it's too tight. I don't know how to explain it, but like there's like extreme scenarios, right? So your bladder relaxes. Your heartbeat obviously increases, right? But the reason why this is all possible is because of your adrenal glands. Whoa, 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 what is going on? Okay, your adrenal glands, right? Adrenal glands will release adrenaline. Release adrenaline. Adrenaline. Right, what this does, right? It just makes everything like, oh my god, what the hell? I need to get out of here, right? That's literally it in a nutshell, right? You just like release adrenaline, commanding everything to like go crazy, right? And yeah, that's what it'll do, right? Your blood flow and your reproductive organs, right? It promotes that ejaculation, which is kind of ejaculation of reproductive organs. So this is like arousal, right? This is why I said your wood will go up. But anyway, this is arousal and this is ejaculation of reproductive organs, right? So for example, in a male, just think of this point, right? This is like your point, okay, and this is like your shoot button. And a question that I had was like, oh, okay, like what happens if you're not in a fight or flight situation? What happens if you're just doing a sprint, right, with your friends, right? If you're doing a sprint with your friends, whoa, okay, right? This is like Bob 1 and Bob 2, and you decide to race, right? What is that? Is that parasympathetic or is that sympathetic, right? And the thing is, this is still sympathetic, right? Right? This is still sympathetic. Even if you're not in danger, right? You can still go. Like your heart rate will still increase, right? Your like everything here will happen, right? But there's obviously different levels, right? Of sympathetic, right? If you're like, I don't know, if there's like suddenly a guy changing coming here with a machete or something, right? I don't know, like a machete, right? Obviously now you're gonna like run way faster than like in a normal race, cause is you're either gonna die or you're gonna like stay there. So yeah, that's it. So this is so basically think of the parasympathetic division as like the chill side, right? This is chill, and this is like you could say this is like the what to say like the not chill side. Just say not chill. Like this is relaxed, and this is like aware. Like you know when you take like a cold shower and then you get out and you're just like, oh, it's like that. You could say in a sense. Yeah. All right. Oh, another important factor that I forgot to mention is that during sympathetic, right? You like basically what happens, your muscles will get loaded with oxygen and nutrients. There'll be a bunch of oxygen nutrients floating towards your muscles, right? So obviously your muscle want to work harder, right? So yeah, that's it. That's the sympathetic and that's the parasympathetic. So this is basically all of the nervous system, right? That I could do. I know I'm not the best teacher. There's probably a lot of other YouTube channels out there if you want to see. My favorite is probably like Trix is at. He's like one of the best. And yeah, the organic chemistry teacher is really good. So yeah, if you wanted to see those videos, those are great. Now let's get into the brain. First, let's get. Uh, do we really need this? Let's take it. The central nervous system. The central nervous system contains the brain and the spine, the spinal cord, right? Now, you have to imagine, right? The brain consists of many parts, right? Cerebrum, cerebellum, brainstem, spinal cord. And generally, right, the lower down you go, for example here, the more primitive the functions become. So like your brainstem, right, it's used for like heartbeat, right? Heartbeat, breathing, breathing, more vital, right? Breathing, I don't know, and something else. Obviously, your hypothalamus over here, it also does some things, but like main thing, the brainstem does quite a bit, right? And then your cerebellum. What does your cerebellum? Cerebellum. Oh, so annoying, bro. Your cerebellum is used for fine motor skills, right? In a sense, like hand-eye coordination. That all your cerebellum, your fine motor skills, right? That's all part of your cerebellum. So your balance, your coordination, everything, that's part of your cerebellum, right? Now your cerebrum. This is like just think about like this is like the smart part of your brain, right? This is like where you think. This is like you, basically, in a sense. This is like how you solve problems, stuff like that, right? That's your brain. That's your cerebrum. Higher order thinking. This is your higher order thinking, right? Thinking. Problem solving, recognition of places, people, words, everything like that, right? Your personality, your decision making skills, everything. That's like your your cerebrum. Now, let's get into the okay, let's take these. Can I take these out? I don't know. You know what? I'm gonna shift to shift. I'm just gonna group these. Group. So I can just take this down at the same time. Alright. Now, in your brain, you've got two parts, right? You've got your left hemisphere and your right hemisphere, right? And the thing connecting these 2 points is called the corpus callosum. I'm not sure how you pronounce it. It's corpus callosum, right? Corpus callosum. And those are like a bunch of fiber connections, everything. They just connect these two parts, right? And in the between this way, you got the hypothalamus, hypothalamus, the thalamus. What else is there? Yeah, that's like I guess it's probably more like the pituitary pituitary gland. But we get these into these later. Pineal gland. What else is there? Alright, there's probably more, but I can't think of it right now. Alright, Now you can probably just see here, right? Let me just ungroup this. Ungroup. Huh? Alright. Look. You see here, right? I know you probably heard this before, but your right side of your brain controls the left side of your body. This is proven, right? This is what like this like old people used to think, like 1960s. Like this is when they first thought of like two hemispheres and everything. So what they do know, there is two hemispheres, right? And the right side of your hemisphere does control your left side of your body. And your right side of your hemisphere does control of your motor control, right? Your right side's known for like creativity, spatial ability, context perception, everything here. And left side controls the right side. Just think about it. Left side of your brain controls the right side, right? That's basically it. Now, the left hemisphere, right, is more logical in a sense, right? This is just like the logical part of the brain. Logical. And this is like your emotional or creativity, right? There's emotional and creativity. So if there's like people who are more left hemisphere, like more methodical. So they use methods quite a bit. Emotional and people who are more creative, right? So obviously they can like recognize words, letters, and numbers. Like the time sequence is greater analysis and calculations, which is why I was saying that. Well, which is why I was saying they're more logical, right? And speech language comprehension and recognition of words, letters, and numbers, right? This is from the right side. You got faces, places, objects, right? So think this is symbols. This recognizes symbols in a sense, and this is recognizing like what you see, like people, faces, objects, right? Now, this is your creativity, right? As I said, emotional and creativity, your spatial ability, and your context and perception, right? This is like, I think this is used for like when you see how you can tell like how a person feels just by looking at them. Like you can say if a person's sad or happy. I'm not sure. I'm not sure, but I think this is part of the right hemisphere. Anyway, let's get into the human brain autonomy. Okay. All right. Now, this frontal lobe, parietal lobe, occipital lobe, and temporal lobe. This is all part of the cerebrum. What is the cerebrum? Higher order thinking. This is like problem solving, decision making, your personality, your judgment, like everything here, right? That's like part of there. So let me talk about this. Your frontal lobe, right? This is like for your personality. Let me just write this. I should probably write this, right? The frontal lobe is used for personality. Your personality is in the frontal lobe most likely. Used for personality, decision making, and there's one more. What did I just say? Personality, decision making, and problem solving. I think. Did I say that? I'm not sure what I said. Oh. And movement. Sorry. Decision making and movement. Sorry. Right. That's like your frontal lobe, right? It also used for your sense of smell. Sense of smell. It helps. Not the main thing, but it helps with your sense of smell. Right? Recognition of sense of smell. Right? Like how you recognize your smell. Different types of smell. Like this was a rose smell. This is a flower smell. This is a perfume, cologne, whatever. Right? That's your frontal lobe. Your parietal lobe, right, is majorly used for like your sense of pain, right? Sense of pain and touch. Sense sense of pain and touch. That's your parietal lobe. What else? Sense of pain and touch. Your how you recognize objects how you recognize objects and spatial relationships. That's all your parietal lobe, right? Chips, relationship. That's your parietal lobe. Sense of pain and touch and how you recognize spatial relationships. That's basically it, right? It's part of the middle brain, right? Like the top of your head. Apicular lobe, it's part of the name already. It's just used for seeing, right? Like it interprets sights. And interpret sight. It's involved with vision, right? Now, your temporal lobe, your temporal lobe, right, is used for so annoying, short term memory, right? It's like used for short term memory, right? That's your temporal lobe, right? It's also used for your musical rhythm, how you collect to beats and everything. That's your temporal lobe, right? Musical rhythm. And it is, mm, and this is also plays a vital role in your speech, right? That's basically it, right? Your frontal lobe, think of it, personality. Let me just recap. So annoying, bro. Why is it down there? Okay, this is your person. All right, whatever. Your frontal lobe, right? Personality, decision making, and your sense of smell, right? That's your frontal lobe and movement as well. Your parietal lobe, that's like your sense of pain and touch, and like how you understand like the objects around you, right? How you recognize them, how they understand, like how they correlates with each other. For example, I could recall all the things in my living room, right? I could see the TV's there. I could see how where the remote is, right? And I could trace back things. Like if I lost the remote, for example, right? I could see where I could like lost put and everything by like remembering the objects around it. That's your parietal lobe, right? Your pictorial lobe, just like your sight, it's heavily involved in sight. Your temporal lobe, it's used for speech, helps with your musical rhythm, and is used for short-term memory, right? Now, recap. Well, further recap, okay? Your brainstem, right, is like your vital, like it's like your vital stuff. Just that's basically it, right? And your cerebellum is fine motor skills, balance and coordination, and yeah, that's it. But one thing I didn't mention, right? In your brainstem, right? This is not the best brainstem. You will have the midbrain on the top, your pons, and then your medulla. I don't know what they do. I'll have to research into that into the bit, but that is what they do. So, is that everything? Alright, that is everything. Okay, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.